Hello, my VIP members, my beloved brand. Here's the exclusive video interview I promised you with, good looking, handsome man. Now you get to see him. Listen, the other people, you're not the VIP members, you get to listen to him, but you don't get to see him. Not for anything. Last week we had King Kong Bundy on the show. Listen, I'll be the first guy to say not the most pleasant guy in the world to be looking at, for an hour and 15 minutes. If the kids came in the room, he probably scared the hell out of them. But this guy, look, I want you to bring him on. Look at him, movie star looks. He's already living in Hollywood. He's already in LA. I'm telling you, bro, he's going to be the next Ryan Gosling in LA. Look at him. I'm talking about, look at him, the one, the only Nigel McGuinness. Nigel, how are you?
Doing good, thanks, Vince. Doing good. Enjoying my life out here, so a lot to be thankful for.
And you know
Some
what?
people would say that actually my accent is better than the way I look. Who knows?
Well, bro, you know what I loved about you? This is great. This is an absolute shoot for my VIPs listening to this site. Bro, we had to book this interview around your surfing schedule, correct?
This is true, but one of the things I learned from my documentary, Vince, and perhaps you learned as well from all the years that you put into wrestling, is that life is short and you've got to make time to enjoy yourself, because when you're 65 years old and you look back, all you've got is your memories.
You're absolutely right, my friend. And you are doing everything that you want to do. And man, I stand up and I applaud you for it. But Nigel, I want to talk about, listen, bro, this all starts at the beginning for you. And I'm just curious to hear about this. You're a guy, bro. Listen, bro, I'm a lot older than you. I got to put my glasses on. You're still a young man. I'm old. But listen, you grew up in Staplehurst, Kent. By the time you're about 12 years old or so, you decide you want to become a professional wrestler. So in your, late teens, early 20s, you make the move to America. Am I right so far?
Yeah, pretty much, essentially. Yeah, I mean, I came over to university. I went to university, get a degree in chemistry, and one of those years was at Kent State. And so it was through that I sort of hooked up with Les Thatcher down there at the HWA in Cincinnati. And so it was when I graduated, I was about 22, 23 when I finally came over here. Yeah.
Now, first of all, bro, listen, you can't just skim over. Oh, by the way, I got a degree in chemistry. Bro, a degree in chemistry. Anybody out there with a quarter of a brain like yours truly, we know what that takes. And I'll go as far as to say there was probably not another wrestler in the history of professional wrestling who had a degree in chemistry. I think I'm safe in saying that. Bro, what was a degree in chemistry your plan B if you weren't to become a professional wrestler?
Exactly was. I mean, when I was first thinking about being a wrestler, I always remember in the back of the PWI magazines, there was one of those little pamphlets that Percy Pringle put out, How to Be a Professional Wrestler. I think almost everybody in my generation that want to be a wrestler ordered that. And in it, it said, if you want to be a professional wrestler, great, work hard, but make sure you've got a plan B, make sure you have an education to go back on. So I decided to actually travel around the world and get a sort of bit of experience, life experience then, and then go to university and get a degree. So I do have something to fall back on if wrestling doesn't work out. Now, in hindsight, if I were to do it again, I don't think I would. And I'll tell you why, because I don't think that higher education in and of itself really is something to fall back on, not in today's world where so many people get higher education. What it is a trade, is a career. Now, Percy was always a mortician in real life, so for him, that was something you can fall back on. Be a carpenter, be a plumber, be a computer technician, whatever it is, something that if wrestling doesn't work out, you can immediately go into it. But a piece of paper that says, I know how to make this chemical, who gives a shit when you're 38 years old? I mean, the truth of the matter is, if you're going to be a professional wrestler, I think you just got to go for it. If you look at guys like Dragon, who's extremely intelligent. I mean, he's got an IQ of like 150, damn near genius IQ. And I think actually, not to counter your point, I think there probably are other professional wrestlers that do have degrees in chemistry or degrees in all manner of things. I think, George Wagner was an extremely intelligent person, but anyway, the point of the matter is that I was always good at it, and I felt like, it would be silly not to get it now before I move on to what I knew was going to be my life's ambition.
Now, Nigel, here's another little point, bro. But it says so much about you, and I pick up the little things. Now, bro, so you come over to the States, like you say, you started in wrestling. From
Hmm.
what I'm reading, bro, you fell a little bit into debt, and that's explanatory in itself. In the early stages of becoming a wrestler, you're not going to make a lot of money. You
Right.
fall into debt. Now, bro, you go back to the homeland of England. You work two jobs so you could put some money together. And then once you put some money together, you come back to the United States and continue on the dream of becoming a wrestler. Bro, I think the percentage of people or wrestlers, wannabe wrestlers that would have done that maybe is somewhere in the 1 or 2% area. They would have gotten a debt, and right then and there they would have given up and they would have went back to their home country. Life would have been a lot easier. You go back to your own country, you make some money so you could fund your own wrestling career, and then you come back to the States. Bro, I think that says a lot about you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I remember Les always talking as well when I'd come back, because I'd come through a couple of months at a time, then I go back to England and then come over here again. So there was a lot of transitions, a lot of moves involved as well. And Les always spoke well of me in that regard. But for me, I just always believed in it. There was never any doubt that I was going to be a professional wrestler. I mean, ultimately, I always believed I'd get to WWE and, be rich and famous and sort of find a girl and settle down and have kids. And as you know from watching the documentary, it doesn't work out exactly how you expect. But there was never any doubt for me. There was never any choice. And when I was like 18 years old, I think it was, I got meningitis. And I was in a coma for like 3 days. And when I finally came out, I mean, obviously I was ecstatic I was still alive, but it really sort of drew attention to the fact that life is fragile and you have no guarantees. And if you have a dream, you have to go for it, and you can't quit. You can't give up. And there's nothing wrong with living a normal life. I mean, to have kids and to be a wonderful parent and to pay your bills is an extremely admirable thing if that's what you want out of life. The truth is, I genuinely believe that life is about finding out what makes you happy and pursuing it. And that's what I did.
And Nigel, I love the no quit attitude, which bro, we can look at your entire career, bro. I think you can look at any wrestler and you can look at their entire career and their body of work, and there's one thing unique you can pull out of every wrestler and what their legacy is and what they left. Bro, when you look at your landscape in wrestling and after wrestling, that no quit attitude is there from the beginning, all the way up till now, which makes me really excited about this LA Fights project. Nigel is going to get this done one way or another. He's going to get this done, and he's proven that time and time and time again throughout his career. I'm going to take you on that ride, and you're going to see some of this. But Nigel, I want to ask you this. Okay, so you get your first big break in Ring of Honor, and I think most of the fans out there know you from Ring of Honor. But Nigel, I've got to ask you now, when you're over there and you're a kid, and then you make the move over, now you're gonna go for this wrestling career. You get in a little bit of debt. You got to go back to England. You come back once you made more money. Now, Nigel, is the ultimate goal at that point for you? Is it WWE? I mean, as a kid growing up in England, is it WWE, or is it, listen, I just want to be a professional wrestler. I'm going to put my boots in whatever ring comes to fruition, and then just basically give 100% of myself and see what happens from there.
I mean, I don't know what it is today, because the professional wrestling landscape today is categorically different. There are so many small independent promotions now that put on fantastic shows. I certainly think that there are people now that exist that probably go, you know what? I'd be perfectly happy just going to Japan. I don't want to deal with a lot of the politics in WWE. But I think largely, and I think even those people, if they're deep down honest, still see WWE as the end game. That's where you make the real money. That's where you have the real fame. And I think that anybody that wants to be a pro wrestler, that's ultimately where they want to go. Now, whether people want to try and cut their teeth on the independents in Japan, various different places to get there, I don't know. I mean, that changes in the end, and then that speaks more to the person as who they are. Because I don't believe, and you can really look everybody that WWE has hired over the last, what, 10 years, and with certain limited exceptions, it's really the guys that did go through the independents and places like that that have had success in WWE because they were able to create their own brand, their own in-ring style, and know exactly who they were before they got there. I remember being in the locker room with Jake the Snake Roberts back in England, 2003, 2004. And he said a lot of very intelligent things. But one of those things is that you'll get one shot with WWE. And if you go there and you're not ready, they will chew you up and they will spit you out in a heartbeat, unless you look like, you're jacked up. But, if you're just a normal looking human being, you've got one shot to make it and that's it. So I always knew that. And that's why I was okay with really paying my dues and cutting my teeth, because I knew that I wasn't ready at that point, not even close. But when I went there, I categorically was ready.
Now, Nigel, when you talk about paying your dues, which of course, all wrestlers need to do in the business, was there a time frame in your mind? I mean, did you at any point tell yourself, listen, I'm going to give this so many years and I'm going to, put my best foot forward, but if it doesn't work out, I've got the degree. I've got other things I can fall back on. I've got connections, back home. Was there a time frame, or was it, I'm going to do this as long as I have to until I, make it to the top?
When I started off, it was, I'm going to do it as long as it takes. But within a certain period of time, I gave myself 5 years. I said to myself, and I say this to young guys starting out now, I said that if I'm not making a living as a pro wrestler within 5 years, then I'm going to quit. And I really believed I was going to stick to that. And because I believe that everybody has dreams and goals and whatever else, and everybody wants to be an actor and go to Hollywood and yada, yada, yada. But the truth of the matter is, it's just not right for some people. And some people aren't designed to be pro wrestlers, no matter how much you want to be one. And you never know that until you try. Now, if you try and after 5 years you're still not having much success at it, then you probably shouldn't do it. Now, when I say you shouldn't do it, that doesn't mean that you should quit and retire, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with wrestling for your local promotion and having fun and enjoying it and getting better and getting to wrestle with some good guys that come through. Fantastic. And I admire people that can do that. It just wasn't for me. For me, I felt like I had to get to WWE. I had to make some money and sort of get to the level of fame where, excuse me, I wanted to try and show that if you have a dream and you never give up, you can make it. And so for me, it was 5 years to make some money at it, or else I was going to quit. Thankfully, Pro Wrestling, no, I got in with them after about 4.5 years. And that was how I was able to just about eke out a living from being a professional wrestler after 4 or 5 years. And then when Ring of Honor, I started working more for them and had more success for them. I kind of, sort of picked up the pieces from there as well. But I don't know that, and you will see time and time again, certainly on the independents, people who will never give up, people who are in their late 30s, early 40s, and still believe they're waiting for a phone call from Vince. And that's not, I don't know. I don't know in and of itself if that's a terrible thing. But sometimes I look at the rest of their life and I wonder, perhaps they could have a more enjoyable, fulfilled life if they weren't sort of struggling so much by trying to make it as a pro wrestler and being injured and being away at the weekends. There's something to be said for just the very simple things in life about having someone that loves you and having children that you're able to see and being able to, afford a couple of vacations a year. So life's a pot shoot. It really is, and ultimately you should try and get the most out of it.
Well, Nigel, I got to ask you this now, because you came to another, defining point in your career. Bro, finally, you get the call to the WWE. This is what you got into it for in the first place. This is what the majority of the boys get into it for in the first place. You get that call, bro. And then, in Ring of Honor, you had suffered a pretty bad bicep injury. And from what I understand, you get the call from the WWE. They put you through that physical, and you told the story on your documentary, I believe, that the bicep injury came up and there was some caution on the part of WWE. So they decided at that point to pull the contract off the table. I have to know, as somebody that set goals for themselves, reached their goals, was now exactly where you wanted to be. To have this happen at that point, what's going through your mind at the time? What's your emotion? What's your psyche?
Just devastated, absolutely gutted. Couldn't believe it. I just thought, there's no way. It's impossible. I mean, I can't be this unlucky. I mean, to explain exactly what happened, I'd had a bicep injury 2 years prior, and I'd been to see an orthopedic surgeon that worked for the professional hockey team in Tampa, and actually had done surgery on a couple of the guys in developmental at the time. And he took a look at my arm and he said, it's not fully torn. It's a partial tear. He says, if you take time off, if you let it heal, if you do some rehab, it will be perfectly fine. If you go in and you have surgery now, you'll need to take 6 months off. And as you know, as a pro wrestler on the independents, you'd make no money if you take time off. So you have to pay for the surgery. You have to take time off. And I just certainly couldn't afford to do that. It was absolutely impossible. And he said, if you just take a few months off and let it heal, it'll be perfectly okay. So that was what I did. And I continued to wrestle for a couple of years after that without really any issue. I changed my style so I wasn't throwing quite so many lariats. I added in a submission finisher, and I learned to work around it. I mean, if you look at every professional wrestler that's been in the job for more than 5 years, they all have injuries and they all learn to work around it. And a lot of times it makes them a better worker because of it, you know, and I certainly felt like I was that person. Now, when I went to WWE and I went for the tryout, the doctor had a look at me and he felt my arms and he said, yep, perfectly fine. And then he literally, and it's funny, Vince, because sometimes I think back to this and you think, how can one question be that important? How can one moment in your life have such a categorical effect on your future? But it did. It absolutely did. Because he looked at me and he just said in passing, you know, have you had any injuries in the past? Because what had happened was they hired someone who went into developmental and they'd asked him, have you had any injuries in the past? And he'd lied and he said, no, perfectly fine. And when he went there, he re-injured the injury that he'd had before. They found out about it. They fired him. And, you know, I don't know who it was. He didn't tell me, but he was never looked back at again. Now, I would imagine, of course, that the doctor probably got a little bit of heat as well because he didn't pick up this pre-existing injury. So he spoke to me very genuinely and he said, look, if you've had any injuries, tell us about them. We'll deal with it if there's any issues. I mean, look, this is a multi-million-dollar company. They're interested in you. They're behind you. So if you need anything done, we'll take care of it. Don't worry. So I said, look, I had a couple of bicep injuries in the past, but I didn't need the surgery. I saw an orthopedic surgeon, and he said it'll be perfectly okay. And I've been wrestling with it 2 years. So he took a look at my arms, and he felt them, and he gave me all these stress tests. And he said, yeah, feels fine, feels fine. But just to be safe, send us the MRIs. So I sent him the MRIs. He took a look at the MRIs, and he said, oh, that should have had surgery. You needed surgery. That's far too far torn. But maybe it's healed in the past, since then. So get some more MRIs done. So, of course, I had to get more MRIs done. That cost more money and was more time where I wasn't getting paid by anybody because at that point I'd obviously cut off all my bookings for Ring of Honor or any other company. So more MRIs done, sent it back to them, more time to wait. He took a look at these, and then it was probably, I'd say, 2 or 3 months after they actually offered me the contract and I signed the first time that he finally called me and said, you know what? I can't hire you. I can't hire you because I really feel that you have to have surgery on your arm. And I was like, well, I mean, will WWE pay for that? I mean, that's fine, you know. I mean, the surgery that he said was going to be $4,000 or $5,000, and I'd be off, he said, for 6 months to 8 months, something like that. And I thought, well, okay, if that's what WWE wants and they say that's what I need, then I'm going to make millions of dollars for them as one of their top guys. Surely that's a worth investment, you know. So, but when I tried to talk to Johnny or I tried to talk to anyone in WWE, it just wasn't there. You know, no one would return phone calls. And within a couple of days, they rescinded the contract, you know. And so I knew at that point, I could have tried to reach out to friends in the company and try to push the issue. But I knew that eventually that was going to get out. And when that got out, I mean, I had an opportunity on the table that TNA at the time, Terry had called me my last day of Ring of Honor and said, look, I know you're going to WWE, but we have interest in you. If it doesn't work out for whatever reason, give me a call and let's see if we can sort this out. So I knew that I had to call Terry and get this sorted out as soon as possible because, now I didn't lie. I said to Terry straight away, I explained exactly what happened, you know. They had this issue with the arm. It's ridiculous. It's silly. I've wrestled with it for 2 years. I can show you. I actually went to my orthopedic surgeon, and he got a letter, and he wrote, and he said, look, there's no reason why he shouldn't be hired. His arm is no more likely to get re-injured than if he'd had the surgery. And it didn't matter because it was their doctor versus my doctor. And thankfully for Terry and thankfully for Dixie, I had another opportunity to go to TNA. Otherwise, that arguably could have been the end of my career there and then.
So to date, have you never had surgery on the bicep?
No, I don't need it. It's perfectly fine.
Okay.
I mean,
you wouldn't be surfing with the torn bicep, bro. I'll tell you that much. Okay, Nigel, I want to go over this quickly because there's a big issue I want to talk about. Nigel, thank God you come to TNA. Desmond Wolfe is born. We put you in the very first program with Kurt Angle, and you absolutely positively hit it out of the park. I know me as the writer. I couldn't have asked for more. You did a tremendous job. But Nigel, I have to ask you this. As a wrestler and where you are, now you're coming into TNA, perhaps the second largest company in the United States, weekly television show, the whole 9 yards. When you're told your first program is with Kurt Angle, at that point, are you like, yeah, that's what I want. I want Kurt Angle off the bat so I could show Kurt and everybody in this company what I'm capable of? Or is there a part in the back of your mind that's like, I wish maybe I would have got a program or two under my belt before I got to Kurt? And what's the mindset when you hear that your first program is going to be with the best guy in the company?
There wasn't a moment of doubt in my head. And again, this speaks to the fact of 10 years of cutting your teeth and paying your dues and developing your style, is I knew I could do it. And that's why I felt so sort of hard done by with WWE, because I knew, like with Dragon, like with Punk, like with everybody that's been in that company that had a good run with Ring of Honor, they've knocked it out of the park because we've developed our style and we know how to work. We know how to get over in the toughest crowd sometimes in the world. And so you go to a company like TNA or WWE, it's not that it's easy, but you certainly feel like you have the tools to make it work. So there was no doubt in my mind. I thought, fantastic. This is a huge opportunity for me. I'm going to do great at this. I'm not going to fuck this one up whatsoever. And so it was a great opportunity for me, and Kurt was so good. I mean, there were so many people in that position that could have looked at me and said, we're going to have my match and this is what I do. And, I'm going to tell you what to do. But Kurt, and this is why Kurt is such a fantastic wrestler. And it's the same with Samoa Joe. It was the same with Bryan Danielson or any of the guys that I had my best matches with, is because it's give and take. And they don't just say, this is the match you're going to do. They say, what do you do? Where can we put this in? We're going to tell a great story with this. And that's what Kurt did. He looked at my style. He knew what I did and he put it in the right places, So there was never any doubt in my mind. And I guess as we saw what happened after my run with Kurt, I'm quite glad I didn't have my other series before then.
Now, Desmond, let's talk about that. Listen, bro, you are a tremendous talent at TNA. I thought you were a tremendous talent, and not only in the ring, bro. You could cut the promo, and to hold your own with a guy like Kurt Angle, and the way Kurt respected you, bro, you were just head and tails a pro. Now, I want to talk about this certain period of time, and I want to go over some of these details because, Nigel, I'm still confused about some of them to this day. Now, I'm looking at the timeline and I'm retracing the steps because I was there, but I can't remember dates. But somewhere around August 2010, you were pulled from a match due to an undisclosed injury. Am I correct so far?
I don't think they said injury. They said undisclosed condition. Yeah.
Condition. Okay. But at that time, we know what the undisclosed condition is, correct?
Right.
Okay. How does that happen, first of all?
So at the time, and I assume still, TNA tests all of its wrestlers as active in-ring wrestlers for hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HIV, and I think a couple other things anyway, every 6 months. And they tested me in January, and I tested negative, and then they tested me again at the end of July or August, whenever it was. It was a few weeks, about a week, I think, before that pay-per-view, and I tested positive for hepatitis B.
Now, Nigel, there's really, I mean, there's really no 100% way of knowing how you came in contact with that. I'm talking about, bro, 100% positively, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure you probably know when and how, but is there any scientific or medical way to know exactly how you became infected with that?
Not how, when, certainly. They look at your, what happens with hepatitis is that the virus largely sits in your liver. And when your body sees the virus in your liver, instead of getting rid of the virus, it just destroys the liver cell that the virus is in. But in doing so, it destroys your liver. And so when it destroys your liver enzymes go into your bloodstream, and that's what they look for, your liver enzymes level. So depending on what level that your liver enzymes are, will depend on when you were originally infected. So from the level of my liver enzymes, I was infected about a month prior, sometime in that sort of era. So I know when it was, but to know what it was, then no. Because hepatitis B is so contagious, there's no way of, you can really get it very easily. For example, with HIV, if there is blood on a countertop, for example, once air hits the HIV virus, it essentially kills it. So it has to be blood-to-blood contact. With hepatitis B, that can exist outside on the countertop or on a wrestling ring for anything up to 48 hours sometimes, but certainly within a couple of hours. So if there's blood around, then you can get it. You can get it from toothbrushes. You can get it from all different manner of things if just what happens to be, you know. So we live in an era, and arguably always have, where you can get nicks and cuts all over the place. So you don't know 100%. But when I saw the doctor, I saw the hepatologist, and he said, you know, have you ever shared needles? No. You know, have you ever had unprotected sex in that time period? No. Have you been around somebody else's blood? Well, yes, I have. But now that doesn't mean, you know, that's cause and effect. That just means that is certainly a possibility. But I'm certainly not going to, you know, point any fingers, because you don't know. You just simply don't know. 30% of people who contract hepatitis B never know where they get it from.
Now, Nigel, when you're informed of this,
Yeah.
you know, and obviously, I mean, I would think the first thing is, you know, you're going through your mind, you're trying to retrace steps. How did this come about? Where could I have gotten it? And, you know, you could have some ideas, but you don't really know. But I would think that's the first thing. But
Yeah.
now I would think the reality of, okay, I am a professional wrestler. I've been a professional wrestler, you know, since I graduated college. This is my livelihood. This is my career. This is how I make my money. Do you immediately, I mean, does it immediately enter your mind, my wrestling days are over? And what is the doctor telling you about that?
Well, hepatitis B is an interesting virus in the sense that 90% of people that get rid of it themselves. It'll make you sick, but then your body will develop its own immunity to it within 6 months, and then you'll test negative for it, and you can't pass it on to anymore because you don't have it. So that was really the prognosis. When I first got it, that's what they said to me. I said, you know, it's not a huge issue. You're young, you're healthy. Give it 6 months and you should get rid of this yourself and you'll be okay to wrestle. So up until I'd had a discussion, I was freaking out. I mean, I went online and I looked and like, oh, hepatitis B, cirrhosis of the liver, all this sort of stuff. But most people, when they test for it, and people don't find out they have it, they find out that they had it, and maybe they thought they had the flu or whatever else, but they got very sick, didn't really put the 2 and 2 together, and then they got rid of it themselves, again, without knowing it. But it's there. They say that like 1 in 20 Americans is infected with hepatitis B at one point in their life. 1 in 20. That's crazy, you know? So that was the prognosis starting off, that within 6 months you'll be fine to wrestle again. So that was why I went to Dixie with that. And she said, okay, look, we'll try and stick behind you. We can still use you in a non-wrestling role so you can make some money. You know, we'll move forward. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, how was it presented to you when you first heard about it?
Well, see, here's the problem. This is the problem I have. And I'm so glad we're talking about this, Nigel. Because and it's funny because I'm reading now that in August you're pulled because of a physical condition. In November, Dixie announces that you were close to a return. So I guess Dixie would have got the news that you gave to her. So that all makes sense. Then you do return in December. You make a TV return, but then shortly thereafter, you're released from your contract. Okay, so basically, like what I'm told is, okay, Nigel has hepatitis B. He can't work in the ring. He's
Right.
not going to be able to work until he's cleared to work. It may take up until 6 months. Basically, the same thing that you're told. But here's the issue I had. And
Yeah.
Nigel, I really honestly, bro, I don't know if this is more on you, on them, or a combination of the both. And I remember we had talks about this, you and I.
Yeah.
But here's what I want to ask you. But here's the problem I had. At that point, it's kept a huge secret. Vince, bro, there were so many things at TNA. Vince, you can't say anything. This was one of those things. So now I know, as a writer, okay, there's a wrestler, that has hepatitis B. Okay, we've pulled them off the shelf. That's cool. We're going to wait to, see 6 months. He gets tested again, whatever the case may be. But I also know in the meantime, he had worked with other guys, so do they have the right to know? Now, I know we want to protect Nigel. I know Nigel wants to be careful, and it might not be good for his career if this gets out there, because in 6 months, he may be fine and nobody may want to work with him because they don't understand it. So, I
Right.
totally get that. But on the other hand, I'm split because I'm like, well, he has this. He has worked with some of the guys. Is it their right to know? So, bro, I was really... It's just a very uncomfortable situation when you know about something like that, but yet you're told to keep it hush hush. Because, bro,
Right.
listen, in wrestling, Nigel, when you're told to keep hush hush about something, right away that tells you, okay, something's below board. If you're telling me and I can't say something about it, well, there's a reason why. So that's where I stood. And I remember having some deep conversations with you. And one of the things I think we discussed was you, basically stating it. And, basically letting people know, again, going back to the type of wrestling now that you're talking about with LA Fights, a
Yeah.
very real situation. And now this great human being in the prime of his life, he's got to deal with this. He never expected this in a million years. So I talked enough, but that's where I was. I'd love to hear
Right.
where you were at the time.
Yeah, I mean, to talk about, obviously in terms of medical things, people have the privacy to keep their medical things to themselves as long as other people aren't at risk. Now, everybody else had been tested. So if what I'm led to believe is true, everybody else had tested negative. Therefore, they have no need to know because they certainly didn't have it. That's correct, right, Vince?
Yeah, no, bro, I wouldn't know who's been tested when, but I mean, knowing that, I 1000% believe that.
Right. So anyway, I assume everybody was tested. I don't know
Right.
that for a fact, but I assume everybody was tested. No one's ever said otherwise, so I've got to accept that
Right.
as fact. But in terms of being used, I mean, I could still be used in a non-wrestling role, and I think that's the education about it. And we saw it. I was watching a documentary about remember there was that kid Ryan White that got HIV from a blood transfusion in
Yep.
the early 80s.
Yep.
Now he wasn't allowed to go to school, and he was really ostracized. And to a certain extent, I think because people didn't really understand hepatitis B within the company, they didn't know whether I could be used or not. But I had a doctor's note saying I could be used in a non-wrestling role. And as we've seen time and time again within the wrestling industry, there's plenty of roles for people where you don't actually have to hit somebody. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I certainly could it be used in that regard going forward. I think, I mean, I don't know. Again, that's a question for you in terms of behind the scenes, how that was positioned and why I wasn't used in a non-wrestling role when I could have been.
Well, I think, bro, like everything with TNA, when push comes to shove, bro, everything with TNA is dollars and cents. I mean, it really is. Everything's on such a tight shoestring budget. So
Right.
what they're going to look at is what could we get out of Nigel for what we have to pay him, and is it worth it for us from a monetary standpoint to make that happen. And then at the end of the day, bro, that's really their call, and they let us know whether you're going to be available, to us or not. So I mean,
Okay.
I'm
That
pretty
wasn't
sure.
even your call.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That wasn't even your call then. So really,
No.
somebody else has said, we can't use him in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, like I said, bro, I think what they look at that point is, okay, we're paying Nigel X amount of dollars. He can't work right now. Working a wrestling match is off the table. So
Right.
the fact that we're paying him X amount of dollars and this is all he can do with how tight our budget is it worth keeping him on board? Now, me, bro, if this is me, this is just me. Okay, bro? What I'm looking at is, okay, well, there's a chance that he was wrestling in our ring. He was wrestling for us. There's a good chance that he might have, contacted this disease on our dime. So, in my opinion, the right thing is going to do is to keep him employed. To let him be, whether he's going to be the announcer for you were for a while on Explosion, whatever it could be responsible, keep this guy employed on our dime. That would have been my call. But bro, now they know, okay, you can't wrestle. You're going to be an overpaid announcer on Explosion. So now, bro, in their minds, this is what happens. Well, he was working indie shows, and, maybe it didn't necessarily happen on our show. Maybe it happened on an indie show. So maybe it isn't our responsibility to keep, bro, you know how they justify it. And I'm sure at the end of the day, that's what happened. But, the decision was really made, I would assume, on dollars and cents.
It just seems crazy to me. And again, not to harp on the point, but like, I remember Jesse Neal when he was injured on the show, and then they stopped using him. And I don't know what he was making, but he wasn't making much. And I get it, I get dollars and cents, but I feel like if you're saving a couple of pennies, but you're paying lots of dollars for something else, don't cut the pennies, just cut the dollars a little bit. That seems to be. But again, I'm not a business person. I didn't work in the office there, so perhaps I don't understand it. But it certainly seems to me that, a few $100 here and there isn't that big a deal to a company that's making or at least spending.
Nigel, I got to tell you something, bro. You're going to find this so hard to believe. And Nigel, This is a true story, okay? And Nigel, what's the old expression? Because it's what you're saying. What is it? Penny foolish dollar. What is that?
People say, take care of the pennies and the pounds will take care of themselves.
Okay, there you go. Nigel, I got to be honest with you, bro, because I used to sit in these meetings because, bro, I was at TNA for 10 years. And I used to sit there saying, I can't believe we're having these conversations. Bro, we would have meetings where the meeting was called because we had to tell the vendors, okay, not me, whoever was involved working with vendors, you had to tell the vendors that if something had to be mailed Federal Express, that they had to pick up the Federal Express charges, and TNA wasn't going to pay for FedEx. Bro, I'd be sitting there like literally looking around the room. Are you freaking serious? So, bro, like when you talk about a couple of $100, yes, bro, to them, a couple of $100 was a couple million when they were worrying about picking up the tab on a FedEx package.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a true story, bro. I've never even told that story before, but I'd be
Yeah.
sitting in these meetings like, are you freaking kidding me? We're the second biggest wrestling company in the United States. We're worried about freaking Federal Express charge. All I could think about was Vince McMahon at the time. But anyway, so Nigel, so they release you, and I'll tell you too, bro. If correct me if I'm right or wrong, but I
Hmm.
think you finally got the release from your contract when from Bruce Pritchard. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Naja, I'll be honest with you. I think a big part of that was too, just my opinion. I could be totally off base. I think a
Hmm.
big part of that was, now Bruce comes on the scene. Now we know the situation with Nigel. Now we know Nigel can't work. Now Bruce is looking at the budget. Bruce is looking at how can I save Dixie money? How can I look like the hero right off the bat? So I'm sure that had a lot to do with it too. Because, bro, I know Dixie, and to this day I defend her as a human being, and quite honestly, to me, I think she would want to keep you on payroll to take care of you. But then again, when somebody else comes and says, look at the money we're spending, blah, 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 she doesn't make that final decision, and it winds up happening anyway. That's
Yeah.
just my take on it.
I mean,
Is
but
that
it's interesting. Even before Bruce came on board, from the time that I got pulled from that pay-per-view to the time that I was released from the company, I really only was used, I think, maybe 3 times, 4 times, something like that. And I was on a pay per deal basis, so I didn't make any money apart from that. And so during that process, where I didn't clear it within 6 months, where I had to start taking medication for it and not knowing how I was going to pay for it, I pretty much went through all the money that I'd saved in the prior 6 months that I was working for the company, and I was pretty much destitute by the time that they released me at the end. So I don't know if you can certainly point just at Bruce. And again, I don't know how things work behind the scenes. You'd have a better idea of it than me. But someone or some people had to have the final say so in whether I got used and or paid. And again, I can't speak about that. Anytime I've dealt with Dixie, she's always been wonderful. I talked to her when I was releasing the documentary, and she was very kind on the phone then, and even said, we'd love to have you back if you're interested. But again, I don't know. The facts of the fact are, though, is that I did go through all of my savings during the year that I was waiting out for me to finally clear this virus, and I was released, and within a month I cleared the virus and was cleared to wrestle again. But by then, it was too late. I was destitute, and well, not destitute, of course. I'm being facetious in that regard. But I'd had to get a job. I was working in a deli counter like the guy from The Wrestler. I mean, it's comical, but that's the reality of what I was
Naj, you know
facing.
what it
And
is, too, and like, again, Dixie's the boss, and you have to put yourself in Dixie's shoes. And
mm,
at the end of the day, Dixie, I believe this is all Vince Russo's opinion. This is what I believe. At the end of the day, I believe Dixie wants to do what's right. And what's right is, listen, let Nigel be the announcer on Explosion. Let him be the announcer with JB. Bro, obviously you're qualified for the job. We wouldn't be forcing a round, peg in a square hole.
sure.
You absolutely would have been phenomenal. Let's put him there. Let's take care of him. 6 months, we test him again. Hopefully, thank God, the disease is cleared. Okay, I'm sure that's what she's thinking. But now, bro, here's where we get into mucky waters.
Yeah.
Now I'm sure, bro, TNA, bro, they literally have to look at every dollar they spend. And bro,
Right.
the second they're gonna be late with paying the gaffers and the cameraman and the audio guys, the second they fall behind, now we have to start looking at the budget and where all the money's going and what can we deduct. What is it? Rob from Peter to pay Paul.
There you go. Yeah.
What can we eliminate so we could pay those guys? So now
Gotcha.
you're going to look at, okay, well, we got Desmond, on Explosion. We're trying to do the right thing and take care of him, but now we're falling behind our bills. Do we really need him on Explosion? So here's where the mistake is made, bro. I'll tell you right now, because all that I understand. That I understand all that, but here's where the mistake is made. when they pull you, off of Explosion, and they know, where they are financially. Like bro, I have no idea where they are financially. I don't get involved in that. But when they have to pull you off of Explosion to pay their bills, and now it's 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You're going through your savings. Bro, I remember that because I remember Terry Taylor telling me. Every single week, Terry Taylor was telling me. So after this goes on, bro, for 4 weeks, there's probably a good idea now that they're not going to be able to afford you in that position. Bro, that's where they have to be honest. And even if their goal is to take care of you and be responsible, if they can't afford to pay you, they have to release you from your contract to be able to go out and make a living. I think they felt responsible, and they really didn't want to do that, and they really wanted to pay you, but they really couldn't, so they kept you on the roster. But meanwhile, neither side, you weren't making any money. They couldn't afford to put you on TV. At some point, they're going to have to they're going to have to cut their ties.
Right. Yeah, and arguably they took too long over that. But at the same time, the doctor told me I'd be back within 6 months, and then that didn't happen. Then I took the medication, and they said within 3 months you should be fine. That didn't happen. My levels got lower, and I got better, and I got better, and I got better, and it looked like eventually I would be okay. And when Bruce talked to me, he said, "Look, this is the reality. You've had this now for a year, and you still haven't got rid of it. I get that you're going to get rid of it soon, but nonetheless." We want you to be able to go and make money elsewhere. And that was how he pitched it to me. And obviously, he's probably playing good cop in that regard. But it's a complex situation. And for me to make it simplified and vilify anybody, I think is doing it a disservice. The bottom line is there are a lot of things that could have been done better. I certainly feel hard done by in some regards. And there are certainly some issues with blood and with hepatitis within the company. As you mentioned to me before we got on air, there was somebody else within the company that was positive for hepatitis. Now, you don't have to go into the details, but that's a reality of the world that we live in.
Yeah. Well, let me just say this first, and then I want to get into that in a second. Let me just say this first about Bruce Pritchard, because there's two ways of looking at this now, and I shouldn't be looking just at what could have been, because there's the whole other side to this. Now, basically, bro, like I said earlier, Bruce could have came in. Bruce could have basically said to Dixie, listen, we're really not, can't afford to use Desmond. We're not going to be able to use him. Let's cut him, save the money, whatever the case may be. But on the other side of the coin, he could have absolutely be doing you a favor by being honest with you, like you just said. And look, bro, we waited 6 months, another 3 months, we're on to a year now. I'm going to cut you loose to go make money someplace else. So, I mean, if that were indeed the case, then, I give credit to Bruce for finally saying we can't string this guy along anymore. But that's the same thing happened, a couple of months later. Another wrestler's there. Another wrestler has, hepatitis B. Now, I will say this. He never worked another TNA match again. I mean, they didn't put him in the ring once they knew that he had the hepatitis B, but again, it was just the veil of secrecy. Right. And
did he continue working for the company in a non-wrestling role?
Not for long. A lot less longer than you did. I could tell you that, bro. Right. Maybe, gosh, I'd say maybe a couple of months.
Well, we don't need to go into any more details because then people can figure out who it was, and that's not the point of this. The point of it is to say that it is an issue within the industry and that, it needs to be dealt with. And I think to a certain extent, and again, let me get your opinion on this. Do you think that the use of blood within pro wrestling has changed at all since what happened to me? And certainly with my documentary, I tried to draw attention to it as well. I mean, it took a long time with unprotected chair shots to the head and our knowledge of concussions, thanks to Chris Nowinski, to now where if you see someone hit someone on the head with a chair unprotected, it takes the air out of the audience because we know the dangers involved. Do you think that the use of blood intentionally within pro wrestling has changed at all?
Oh, I absolutely do, bro.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt about it. And yes, I do think a lot of that is attributed to you. And bro, like, listen, I've said this all along because a lot of people are, screaming about the PG thing on Raw, and we need this and we need that. And I've said it all along, bro. You don't need blood. You don't need blood in wrestling. I'm saying that as a writer. You don't need blood as a tool. There are so many other tools at your fingertips that you have, and making a guy cut himself isn't freaking one of them. I've always said that. So, bro, absolutely. I would say the excess blood has basically has just as much been taken out of the game as chair shots to the head because of concussions. No
Well, let me
doubt
ask you.
about
Let
it,
me
bro.
stop you, Vince. Let me ask you this. Now, is TNA still does have blood on some of the shows, right? Because I remember a specific instance. I remember hearing, and I don't know if it was from you or not, but I remember hearing from somebody in the company, no more blood, not going to be a part of this anymore. And I remember the very next week that Ken Anderson got hit in the head with a microphone and got color then. Do you remember that?
That I don't remember, but listen, bro, I will tell you this, Desmond. I'll absolutely tell you this, bro. If you saw more blood from that point on, bro, 100% honesty, Desmond, it's the boys petitioning for the blood. It's
Fair enough.
not coming from the office. It's when the talent gets with the agent, and the talent, we need blood here, we need blood here, we need blood here. It always comes from them. And then, bro, yes, it gets bounced back to the top. And bro, it's got to take that person at the top to say absolutely not no. When they
Right.
don't say absolutely not no, then you got blood in the match again. But I will tell you, bro, 100% of the time, 100% of the time, that's coming from the wrestler himself, pitching it, telling them they need it, and promoting that they get blood in the match. So bro, at the end of the day, Desmond, and again, you're one of the intelligent ones. I said that going into the beginning of this. At the end of the day, bro, you know it, and this is true. They're their own worst enemies, bro.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I don't know if I go that far, but I think if you haven't been effective with yourself, then perhaps you're not aware of not necessarily the dangers, but what it is you're creating. I think when people have said, if I want to bleed in a match, that's my choice, isn't it? Well, not really, because your blood is going into a ring, and then somebody else doesn't have the choice to not wrestle in a ring. Well, I guess they do. They can say, I'm not going to wrestle on the show, but then, they don't get booked, they don't get paid. You know what I mean? It's a complex situation. It's not like a chair shot that you can give someone a chair shot and it doesn't affect anybody else. When you bleed in that ring, your blood is there. And, I will never know where I got hepatitis from. I don't know if I got it from somebody in the ring, or it could have been from outside. Who knows? Like I said. But what I do know is that if I'd have bled in that ring the week before I got tested, and somebody else had bumped on that on my blood, perhaps with one of those drawing pins or whatever else, they would have got it as well. So that's without a doubt. There's no doubt about that. So that really is my sort of point and why things need to change. And perhaps, as you said, perhaps they are starting to change.
Bro, they started to change a long time ago, and like I said, bro, it's the boys, and it's what you said, bro. I was watching when I was doing the research on you today. I was going to all the clips I could find, and there was one guy where I guess you were just on the show, and it was overseas, bro, and you were talking about eliminating blood from wrestling, and the next week they had somebody else on. I don't even remember his name, but the guy, one of the first things he said was, well, I've done this, that, and the other thing. I've never contacted AIDS, and I've never contacted hepatitis B. And I'm sitting there saying, yeah, bro, you're lucky you haven't. Just because you haven't gotten it doesn't mean you can't get it in your next match. But, bro, sometimes bro, how the wrestlers think. That match at that time is the biggest thing, going on, not only in their lives, but in the world Forget about ramifications of what possibly could happen. We've got to make this, blow the roof off the house. But bro,
Yeah.
you need to know, and I hope you do know. I think you made all the difference in the world when it came to that, bro. When it came to eliminating the forced use of blood in the difference. I mean, all the difference in the world.
I hope so. I mean, some of the guys have come up to me, and again, for as many people as you say, perhaps they're worst enemies and they want to have blood, there've been a lot of people that have come up to me in private or in public and have said, I'm glad that you spoke out because I never liked blood. I always hated it. And now I feel as though I have the ability to say to someone, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. And I think perhaps it will take a new generation of guys coming through to really to make it sort of widespread to where people don't do it anymore, because I just think that, and certainly I think in this day and age, it's so out. I mean, the cat is out, or the rabbit is out of the hat, so to speak. The cat is out of the bag. No one's convinced by this anymore. I mean, how many times do we see people on TNA and right in front of the camera they're doing this? It's insane. It's not high art. It doesn't convince people anymore. And
bro, I remember there was bro, the early years of TNA, bro, because bro, I'm not one of the boys, and with all due respect, I'm not gonna mutilate myself. I mean, I'm just not. And I remember, bro, I took a guitar like to the head, and to the forehead from Jeff Jarrett, right? And I immediately went down and covered my face, right? I went down and I covered my face, and the way I laid out the spot, the trainer immediately runs over to me with a towel. He runs over to me with the white towel. Bro, while he's putting the white towel on my face, he's squirting theater blood in the white towel. So
nice.
Now all of a sudden I got this towel on my face. Now you're seeing the red start to seep through the towel. I never took the towel off my face. They walked me to the back. So bro, there are ways, just like in the movies, of painting that scenario without having to go to such extreme measures.
Yeah, absolutely. And even aside from the use of blood, though, I think it's important that guys continue to get tested outside of the major two companies, and it's important that there's a vaccine for hepatitis B. So if you're going to be around people, even if there's no intentional blood loss, sometimes it happens by accident. So if I'd known that there was a vaccine for hepatitis B, Christ, I'd got it done straight away.
Now, I'm naive about this, Nigel. I'm asking you because I don't know. Now, hepatitis B, Nigel, is that something that you're completely cleared up, or do the levels just go down and stay down? Does it, after time and after medication now, does it completely get out of the system?
So generally speaking, 90% of people will clear it themselves. If you clear it yourself, you develop immunity to it. It's completely out of your system. You'll never get it again. If you're one of the 10% who don't clear it themselves, then they say there's only a 3% chance that you'll ever get rid of it completely yourself and develop immunity. I was in that 3%. The chances of what happening to me was astronomical. And when you think about it that way, you think maybe this happened for a reason. I don't know. But now I am one of those 3% where I did clear it myself with medication. I've developed the immunity, so, I won't get it again. And I certainly can't pass it on because as far as anybody can see in my blood tests, I'm negative, but I have the immunity for it.
Yeah. And not only that, bro, but now listen, we got LA fights, bro. You're going to have your own successful television series. I think too, just by the looks and, you're the surfer type and all that, I think you're going to be a leading man in the movies as well in a couple of years. But bro, this LA fights, just one more time, bro, why we got to contribute to this?
Because it's something categorically new and different. And because what I'm doing here is I'm just giving you the opportunity as the fan who's thought of this stuff themselves. I guarantee you have thought, why can't storylines be more shades of grey? Why can't the in-ring style be a little bit more believable? Why can't it be held in the same esteem as Walking Dead or all these sort of shows? It can be. But you've got to get behind the opportunity to make it happen. You can't do it 52 weeks a year. You have to get behind someone who has the idea and the opportunity and the determination to make it happen. I'm that guy. I totally believe it at this point in time. This is the opportunity to do it. This is the opportunity to make it happen. You've got to believe in me. You've got to believe in the product.
And where do they go, bro? Where do they make the contribution?
lafights.com will take you to the Kickstarter page. At McGuinness Nigel, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm on Facebook as well, Instagram, all over the place. You're going to be hearing a lot more about this. The Kickstarter thing runs out at the end of January. I need to get 370 grand by the end of January, or I will get nothing. I'm reaching out to everybody I possibly can. Tell everybody else you possibly can about it. Tell them that you love the idea. You want this to happen. Already I've got lots of people behind. I'm way past 10 grand already, and it's not even been a week. So this could be a huge thing, but I need everybody's help. I need their support. I know that there are enough professional wrestling fans out there that love professional wrestling, that want to see this happen. You just got to get behind it and make this a reality.
And I got to tell you, bro, and I say this from the bottom of my heart. I've worked with thousands of wrestlers, and that there are maybe a handful where I would put my eggs in their basket, especially when it comes to my contribution and my hard-earned cash. But listen, I know you guys out there, watching this now. I know you love wrestling. I know we all have a vision of what it can be. Nigel is the guy. You have to trust me. You have to put your trust in him. He's been there. He's done it. He's working in Hollywood as an associate producer right now. He has the intelligence. He has the vision. And if you're going to support anybody, please support Nigel McGuinness and LA Fights. Nigel, listen, I appreciate you coming on the show, but please keep us posted. Let us know where you are, because we want to do everything on our end to make this happen for you.
You got it. No worries. Well, I'll keep you on there with social media. You can't miss me. I'm going to be tweeting about it and pushing it on Facebook. Monday at 10 a.m. Well, actually, that'll be past by the time this airs, but I'll have done a Reddit. You can go and check on there. There'll be a lot of Q&As as well. I'll be doing a Q&A on Twitter. I do understand that what I'm trying to present here on my Kickstarter, perhaps some people don't understand fully what it is if you don't necessarily have that creative mindset yourself. So I'm totally open. If you have any questions about it, tweet them out to me, send me questions on Facebook. I will answer everything as honestly and as openly as I possibly can, because I've got nothing to hide here. I put myself on the line. I mean, a lot of people, talk about wrestling should be this or wrestling should be that, but very few people actually get behind it and say, this is what it should be. I'm doing that. And, is it perfect? Is it 100%? I'm not sure 100%, but you've got to try it. You've got to do something. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm putting my eggs in this basket. I really believe it.
All right, Nigel. Well, listen, good luck with lafights.com. If anybody can make this happen, it's you. And again, I thank you for spending the time with us this morning with the brand, and also on my podcast, The Swerve, as well.
Cheers, mate. Enjoyed it.
Take care, man.